And thank you everybody for joining us for this noon webinar today here on BizNews. And as we have promised, we are going to look at the promise to fight or arrest corruption in South Africa. And this was sparked by the president announcing recently that he is going to task several agencies to investigate COVID-related corruption. And he said that the lead agency in this regard will be the Special Investigating Unit. So because there are several such units at play in South Africa responsible for dealing with crime and corruption, I decided that let me invite the head of the Special Investigating Unit, Andy Mothibi, who is with us, as well as Sipho Ngwema of the National Prosecuting Authority, so that he can explain where they fit in the whole story, and Advocate Selby Makgotho of the Special Tribunal, to tell us about their role in this regard. And we have this conversation with the latest news being that the SIU together with Eskom are actually pursuing a civil matter against several Eskom executives for more than 3.2 billion rands. And one wonders how the whole thing fits in here. I would have thought that this matter would have been taken to the Special Tribunal, but it appears it's going to be taken to the court. So without further ado, gentlemen, welcome. A pleasure to have you on this webinar. And I start with you, Advocate Mothibi. Please tell me a bit more about what's going on between yourselves and Eskom regarding the recovery matter against the, how many are they? 12 executives of Eskom. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mr. Modise, for the opportunity to engage with the audience in the South African public. Our investigation at Eskom started off back in 2018. We've got a specific proclamation signed by the president that enabled us to do that presentation. That investigation has been very thorough. And in the process, let me just make this very clear. We work towards producing a report at the end of the investigation to the president. But since we started, our methodology works as follows: that when we immediately start the investigation and we then have sufficient evidence in our view that necessitates for anyone at Eskom to be charged with misconduct, then that evidence has to be taken to the Eskom board as the accounting authority and the CEO, so that they can take action against whoever is involved, right? And we have been doing that. We've got a number of executives that have been charged with misconduct based on our referrals. Some have resigned in the face of those referrals. And then we've got another part of our outcomes that says when SIU investigation reveals that there is a criminal act that has been committed by anyone, whether it's a service provider dealing with Eskom or Eskom employee, then our law provides that that evidence has to be referred to the National Prosecuting Authority. So in this case, we've got various referrals that we have made, and I know that our colleagues at NPA are geared up to deal with that. We've been engaging with them on an ongoing basis, and I'm sure Mr. Ngwema will attest to that later on when he comes onto the floor.
Well, let me just quickly.
The question that you have asked now is this is another part, which is the civil litigation part, right? The civil litigation part also says if SIU has sufficient evidence to recover, the SIU is mandated by law to act on behalf of state institution in its own name. Obviously, we at all times act together with the state institution involved. In this case, we're acting with Eskom, And we have found various evidence pointing to irregularities that point to all of those executives. Some of them are members of the board. Some of them are executive authorities that would have been in place at the time. And we are saying, just in summary of in that litigation process, is that all of those have participated and made themselves guilty of committing those irregularities. In some instances, yes, we have found evidence of corruption, which amongst others, as corruption is a criminal offense that we have referred to NPA. But in this civil litigation, we are seeking to recover based on the course of action that says you have put Eskom at prejudice. Eskom has lost so much money, and it is our case that they were accountable in causing that damage to, or that prejudice to Eskom.
And when is the matter going to appear before the courts? Do you know? What is the date?
Well, we don't have the date at the moment. It's still at the stage where we have now issued summonses. The next step is that the parties will probably have received summonses. The sheriff has to serve them with those summonses, and the legal process kicks off. The civil litigation involves, exchange of papers, and then the parties will meet. In some instances, it involves case management by the court, and so that it is ready when it goes to the for the hearing. So we will follow that legal process, ensure that the parties understand what the issues are, what is it that they need to answer on, and as I said, the judge will probably also be involved in terms of assisting, because more often we find that if the judges are not involved and they don't do case management, and this is what they do to avoid what's so-called interlocutory actions. That interlocutory in simple English is that you raise issues in the process, and those issues end up delaying the civil litigation process. So by including or for the judges to do case management is to avoid exactly that, so that when the matter goes to court, it's ready for the hearing. And I'm sure my colleague, Mr. Makgotho, will attest to that later on. You asked a question in terms of why is this matter in the High Court? We've got various matters in the High Courts which we have tabled to do similar recoveries. Of course, we are really delighted to have the Special Tribunal in place. In this case, between ourselves and Eskom and the legal representatives involved, there's been a decision based on some of the considerations to take this matter to the High Court. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Makgotho, I'll come to you in a moment for you to explain where you fit in the puzzle. But let me go to Sipho Ngwema of the NPA, because you are the ones who are under the spotlight here, Sipho, that so many cases. How many actually do you have, corruption-related cases that are before you that you have to action? One that stands out anyway, that South Africans talk about all the time, is the Estina matter. And we heard from Advocate Hermione Cronje late last year saying that you were ready with that case. It was ready for prosecution. And that was last year, November. And nothing has happened until now. And people wonder whether it's still on the agenda or it's been taken off the agenda.
Thank you, Pratim. No, yes, indeed, it is still on the agenda, and many other cases. And one of the complications, and my colleagues will tell you with investigations, is that sometimes you believe that we are almost done, and then you get one statement that then will lead you to have to follow up on many other things, and sometimes you have to miss your deadlines that you would have hoped you were going to adhere to. But the other thing that has to do with Estina in particular is that it involves other countries. We are working with other countries, and some of them are not as responsive as the others, because you must remember the money flows into the bank accounts outside South Africa. And some of the countries are more responsive than the others, as I've said. And then came in COVID-19, which then disrupted things much further. But that case is on course. We are continuing, but we're just trying to tie up the loose ends, because before you go to court, you must make sure that you have a formidable case, you have authenticized everything, and with the various accounts that are around, you need to make sure that all the processes, particularly with regards to Criminal Procedure Act, you will be able to table that as admissible evidence. So there are a number of other things that therefore we had to do. In the past week, the President announced regulations changing some of the issues that have to do with Zondo Commission. So even from that front, we are now able to access certain information that we are not able to access before, given the fact that the regulations did not allow us to do that. So when you do investigations, you are confronted by some of those technicalities. And in some cases, there are forensic investigations that must be finished before you are able to proceed. But all the processes are in place. We are moving, we are making progress. And I think I understand that people are impatient, but as far as the investigations are concerned, there's good progress that is going to be made, and our actions are going to show South Africans that indeed we are making progress.
And you know, one of the things that makes people impatient about these matters is that they've been before the NPA for quite some time, particularly the case that I've mentioned, but there could be other corruption-related cases that you are working on that are likely to be taken to the courts sometime soon. If you can give an indication of how soon you think these cases will appear before the courts, because you know, year after year, and the people will sympathize that the NPA was hollowed out at one point, but you know, it feels like you're kicking the can down the road. Say, well, arrests are imminent. Yes, please give us time. How much time? When?
You see, that's the mistake that we have made in the past, to pronounce on when are we going to take action. And one of the things that are very important in investigation is the element of surprise. And we shouldn't fall into the trap of giving deadlines, because we know those are going to create good headlines, but they put us under pressure, and these things keep on changing. Investigations can be very fluid, but all I can tell you, Pratim, is that there's good progress, and we are going to be able to take action, and that action is going to be seen. You know, when we were dealing with VBS in particular, we never said these are the dates, but we took action, and we, at that point, were able to account fully to the Republic how far we have gone, because when we made arrests then, we were able to give the suspects indictments. We didn't postpone for further investigation. The investigation was done, and this is how we want to quality control the work that we are doing. We will take action, certainly, but I can't give timelines now. But when we take action, the Republic will know that action has been taken, and will give account of how far we would have come at that particular point.
Okay, to the attendees, if you want to pose questions, please use the chat box there and send through your questions so I can then direct your questions to the panelists. I'm with Advocate Andy Mothibi. He's the head of the Special Investigating Unit. Advocate Selby Makgotho of the Special Tribunal, and Mr. Sipho Ngwema, who speaks on behalf of the National Prosecuting Authority. Dr. Makgotho, I spoke to you recently about what the Special Tribunal is all about, and it was established ostensibly to fast-track the civil litigation matters coming from the SIU, and I know there are several matters that are before you, but people haven't really heard of any matters. I think there's one recently that had to do with Midiosa in the Northwest, but people wonder how many cases are going to be heard by yourselves soon. And you've been given the task of recovering up to 15 billion rands. And what progress have you made in that regard?
Thank you, Mr. Modise. In essence, the Special Tribunal started working as of the 1st of October 2019. And to date, we have received almost 25 cases that came from the investigations arising from the Special Investigating Unit. And I can indicate that most of those cases have been quite in existence for quite some time. But then we are at a point where we have granted orders in some of them. And the most recent one, beyond the Mediosa one, involved executives at Transnet. We just recently granted a preservation order wherein we intend to recoup almost 18 million that one of the executives at Transnet had misappropriated based on the court papers. But then of the 25, we have quite a number of them, I think 10 or so, that are going on unopposed. We are going to be granting default judgments by the end of this month. We should have finalized the life SCD matters, wherein we are cumulatively trying to recoup an amount of 30 million rands. And again, we have got the Northwest Scholar Patrol cases that is involving the Department of Community Safety and Transport in the province of Northwest. What is actually at issue here is that the parties, in particular the respondents, did not oppose based on the days that they were supposed to. Hence, we are going for a default judgments. But then in case of matters that are being defended or that are being opposed, they've been referred to the different judges for case management, and it becomes almost impossible at this point in time to say those that have gone for case management will be ready by such and such a date. However, I can indicate that almost 18 matters involving quite a number of stakeholders from different sectors of the public service have been referred to for case management. And once the judges have done that, they will be enrolled for, once they are ripe for hearing, they will be enrolled. But those that are unopposed, where we did not receive any response from the respondents, we are going for default judgments.
Well, I have received numerous questions now. One from Tim Elliott, who says, brave investigative journalists and people have written factual articles, books about rampant corruption, naming those implicated, and to date, not one arrest or a charge laid. How is that possible? I think, Sipho, you can respond to that. I mentioned the Estina dairy matter. There's a book, and it's been there for what, more than 2 years now, I suppose? And it's been updated every time, that book. So I'll hear from you. But let me go to another question. This is Carl Lockett, who's asking, why is former President Zuma not behind bars yet? All talk and no walk, it seems. And I will go to the other questions, but let me start with you, Sipho.
Thank you, Pratim. Look, there is a lot of evidence, and that's why earlier I alluded to the fact that we are now able to access stuff that is before the Zondo Commission. Before, we are not allowed to access that stuff. But secondly, is that indeed the standards in terms of publishing accusation is not the same that we are going to meet in a court of law. So there are a number of things that we have to do to make sure that those cases are quite formidable. So those investigations are taking place. And in fact, there's a number of arrests that have been made in other areas. You must remember one of the focus areas, particularly what the investigative directorate had to start with, was to look at corruption within the law enforcement agencies. And a number of police officers, including former acting commissioners, were arrested working with IPID, and those matters are before court. There are a number of other matters where we have received freezing orders. In fact, with regards to some matters, Transnet in particular, we have a freezing order of 1.6 billion. And we have, as it was mentioned earlier by Advocate Mothibi, that we have arrested people at Eskom, and those matters are before court. But you don't go to court and arrest people, or you don't go hastily and arrest people before you have a watertight case. You are all aware of what happened to the NPA when it had to withdraw cases in the Free State. I think in particular with the matter that we have raised, which is Estina, where the matter had to be withdrawn because at the time the case was not ready. So it is very important from a quality control point of view that we act at the right time, we have credible evidence, we have witnesses that will be able to stand the test of cross-examination. So this is what we are doing. So those matters and those people implicated there, where there's credible evidence, they are not off the hook, but the investigations are taking place. But we want to make sure when we go to court, there are reasonable prospects of success. And that's what the guys are working on. And those investigations are proceeding very well.
Tell me, how is the proclamation signed by the president recently that says that the investigating capacity of the State Capture Commission should be seconded to yourselves going to help? In what way does it beef up your capabilities, Sipho?
One of the biggest problems that we have is, a lot of skilled people left law enforcement, and we're unable to recruit from the Zondo Commission because the regulation prohibited them from joining the commission. And now, very many of them, their contracts are coming to an end, and those people will be able to come and assist. And what is, I think, critical about them and what makes this a game changer is that they have worked on these investigations. So there is some knowledge that they have, there is some experience that they have in terms of many cases that we are investigating, be it Transnet, Eskom, and many others that were mentioned in state capture. So we'll be able to recruit that skill to come and join the investigative directorate. So one of the issues, as you know, the investigating directorate had issues with was capacity. So now, with that door being opened to us, to being able to recruit from the Zondo Commission, that will help us a great deal and make sure that very many of these cases are sped up and we're able to come to a conclusion as soon as possible.
And Advocate Mothibi, some of the matters that we have raised here do not give South Africans comfort because they've been on the table for some time. And therefore, when the president says the SIU is going to investigate COVID-19 related corruption, people say, oh, come on, give me a break. It's going to take several years. And we expect that COVID, as much as we don't know how long it's going to be with us, that at some point it will go away. So how much capacity do you have to add on to the work that you are already doing? And what speed are you working at when you are trying to investigate COVID-19 related allegations? Because those are happening on a day-to-day basis and they are happening in real time. Some of them are already out there in the open. How are you going to approach that?
Right. No, thanks again, Mr. Modise. I would like to just say to the audience and the members of the public, for example, the cases that Advocate Makgotho has referred to, that is a demonstrable action that we are taking as SIU and as government in general, in collaboration with the other agencies such as NPA and the Hawks. Those are tangible results that you see. Those matters are there at the court for recovery and to hold people accountable for the losses that they've caused. You've heard that we will be very soon having met those matters in court. And in many of those, I've read some of the members of the public were asking what happened to the life as it many matters, right? You've heard now from Advocate Makgotho that those matters are there and will probably be getting default judgments. I mean, in simple terms, default judgment really says the other party is not opposing, and I can safely say here that they're probably not opposing because we have made out a formidable case for us to recover. They could not put up a case to gainsay what we have put up to court, including the scholar transport, which has prejudiced the Department of Education in the Northwest, has caused so many prejudice to scholars. The transport to take children to school was so prejudiced. We are acting on those. Now, on the COVID-19 investigations, we do have allegations from almost all the provinces. We've got teams on the ground as we speak now. Those teams are collecting documentation. They are looking and assessing all of those contracts, all of those companies that are involved. So as we speak now, I'm satisfied that we are making progress. You know that when the president announced this, he said SIU will report 6 weekly to the president. So we are making progress such that we should be able to announce tangible results. And remember the outcomes that I mentioned when I started. When we make that report, those outcomes would be, are there any civil litigation processes that we have started? That will go to the Special Tribunal for recoveries. Are there any criminal cases that are underway based on the crimes that have been committed during this COVID-19 irregularities and corruption, and whether there are those officials who are being approached with charges of misconduct. And I must also say that it's not only the public sector or public officials. There are private companies that are involved. We will also not spare them. If we need to act against them, either refer criminal matters against them or act civilly against them to recover from them, we will do so. Of course, in the process of investigation, there's the requirements for some specialists that SIU does not ordinarily employ. For example, if you talk about the quality of PPEs, we would need a specialist who would assess that. Of course, there are also government entities that we can use to assess the quality. We are also engaging those specialists. So in the process, we've got other resources that we appoint so that we can augment in those necessary areas of the investigation process.
Ashley wants to know if the SIU is really free of political influence. SIU. Andy?
Mr. Modise, I would like to hear.
Well, the question is, are you free of political influence? Have you had politicians, including the president, come to you and say, I want you to investigate so and so and look the other way when it comes to such and such?
We don't have that, and if that happens, I do not anticipate anyway that it will happen. And if it does happen, we will obviously reject it, because we are supposed to investigate and do our work without fear, favor, or prejudice to anyone.
Here's another question. It comes from Linda Hosfield, who wants to know why preservation orders are not applied for as soon as evidence of corruption is uncovered. For instance, in the COVID-19 matter, we read reports about certain amounts of money already being paid, and some of the older cases, we know how much money has changed hands, and those matters have been ventilated extensively in the public domain. So once you come across such information, and Sipho, you can follow up with your response, but I want Advocate Mothibi to go first. Why don't you institute or apply for preservation orders right away as soon as these matters come to your attention?
No, great. That is a very important question. We are going to be doing exactly that. And when the proclamation was announced, we've got a working method based on the memorandum of understanding that we have with the NPA, and the NPA would include asset forfeiture unit, so that we could also, from the onset, involve. We've got now, and thanks to our colleagues at NPA, they've given us names of advocates in all the provinces that are in the asset forfeiture unit, so that our teams in all the provinces can work with them, collaborate with them. When we pick up that there are those wrongdoings, and anybody who is involved, whether it's public sector official or private sector companies, when there's a legal basis to do a freezing of assets, we will do so. We are working together with NPA and asset forfeiture on that. But in terms of our legislation and with the special tribunal now in place, the SIU also has got the legal mandate to be able to do that. But we are collaborating with our colleagues at the asset forfeiture so that we are able to do this formidably.
Sipho?
Yes, indeed, Pratim, as Advocate Mothibi has said. In fact, there are two matters that we moved swiftly from an asset forfeiture point of view, and that relates to the unemployment insurance fund, which was defrauded. So we work with all the colleagues in a collaborative effort. However, you must understand that initially there must be criminal investigations that must take place in order for us to be able to take action. At least there must be sufficient information that we can bring before court that there are these particular offenses that may have been committed in order for us to act. So we have acted swiftly on money that was sent from unemployment insurance funds to individuals who were not deserving. Those monies were sent fraudulently to them, but we are still waiting for more because there are cases that have been brought to the attention of law enforcement agencies. Those investigations are taking place. And you must remember also, given the collaboration that we have institutions like Financial Intelligence Center, which is able to freeze accounts as soon as sufficient information is brought to them, so they have been able to do that. And we take over from an asset forfeiture point of view to apply for preservation orders. So we are awaiting investigations, information from investigators in order to take action swiftly on any other matter where there may be corruption or any other breach of the law that may have happened. So as soon as we get that information, we don't waste time. In fact, we have given ourselves 7 days to act, to make sure there are papers, and to act swiftly and approach court once that information or evidence has been presented to the NPA.
Well, yeah, and the Special Tribunal has also played a role in this regard most recently, but are there several matters of this nature that are going to be heard by the Special Tribunal anytime soon? Advocate Makgotho, the self-preservation matter, the preservation matters, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ntate Modise. Indeed, we do have quite a number of preservation orders that will be granted. But I think it's important to emphasize the fact that you either stand or fall by the papers before the Special Tribunal. So from an investigating point, one would expect that it should be able to assist the courts. But going back to the question, I think in terms of most matters that are coming, for instance, the one that I spoke about for the default judgments, and even those that are going for the opposed motion roll, it will depend. At this point, one is not in a firm position to indicate as to the number of cases, because remember, they still have to be decided based on the merits and based on the merit. So it becomes then important to understand that once the papers have been presented, arguments have been made, the appropriate orders will be made, and this is inclusive of the preservation orders or forfeiture orders or any other declaratory order that the Special Tribunal may deem fit to hand in appropriate circumstances.
Just give me a quick update, just briefly. What is going on at provincial level? I know, for instance, that there are matters that are before you in the Eastern Cape as well as KwaZulu-Natal. Which matters should we look out for in the next few weeks?
In the Special Tribunal, currently we have matters in the 3 municipalities in the Eastern Cape, that is Alfred Nzo, Raymond Mhlaba, and Mbashe local municipality. Cumulatively, we are looking at an amount of 130 million. That is what is being prayed for in the papers. This relates to a yellow fleet agreement or contracts that were entered into the 3 said municipalities, and the plaintiffs, in this case the SIU, it needs an order to set aside or nullify the contracts, and those matters will be had within this term. Within this term, that is means before the end of September. In the KwaZulu-Natal province, we have matters involving the Department of Public Works. There have been contracts there that have been entered into, and again, the prayers is to nullify or declare, is to declare them null and void, because the legislative and other constitutional prescripts were apparently not followed. So those matters, I think they will be coming in. Those are the matters that we should expect to hear within this current term.
What do you mean when you say current term? And let me just be specific. When you talk about public works, are you referring to the Nkandla matter, for instance?
Yeah, well, there are quite a number of them. Public works entered into different contracts with different service providers. Yes, the Nkandla matter being one of them. Unfortunately, we don't have the data set because it is still going through case management, along as others. I think in the KwaZulu-Natal province only, relating to the Department of Public Works, we have got 12 matters. Once the judge assigned to the cases has concluded case managing, the dates will be made available and the matters will be enrolled. That means they will be ripe or ready for hearing.
Okay.
The current term actually started last week in July, and then it ends in September. So within these 3 months, we have quite a number of matters, the Eastern Cape ones and the KwaZulu-Natal ones, and the default judgments that I earlier on spoke about. So it's going to be very busy. But then again, with the default judgments, our view is that we need to work as hard as possible to push as much work as possible so that we can make space for other cases that will be coming our way.
Brian Mason says there has not been one high-profile person that's been prosecuted. Surely there has to be action or nothing. And Sipho, that's the kind of pressure that you are under, right? Even if you say soon, because soon can mean anything in your space. So soon could mean 6 months, soon could mean 2 years down the line.
There's no doubt about that, Pratim. Every day people ask us about high-profile people. As I said, investigations are continuing, but also what we always try to avoid is to be fixated with individuals, because we can make mistakes. Once you have a fixation, obsession of a particular individual, you may want to prove your hypothesis and make mistakes and manufacture evidence. But I must emphasize here that in terms of the development of the cases, in terms of where evidence leads us, we are following that evidence, and we will act on whoever. There's no influence that is going to stop us from acting against anyone where the evidence leads us. And as I said to you, we are impatient as well, and we understand the frustration of South Africans. But there must be serious quality control before we take action, so that we are not embarrassed in court. But we will take action, and South Africans, I assure them, they will see action. Because if there's evidence that leads us to people, we'll follow that evidence and we'll arrest those suspects. Well, and as things stand now,
Jackie Hadland wants to know if you can give a ballpark sense of timing, that, something, when you say soon, do you mean 6 months? Do you mean 3 months? Do you mean 3 years?
Look, there are cases where we have made arrests already. And I must say, people should not look beyond the end of the year, should not look beyond many months for us to be able to act. With the evidence that we have, it seems as though we may be able to take action sooner. And unfortunately, I will not be able to give dates, because also you must know that the criminals are also listening. And there must be an element of surprise when we act. But South Africans will hear from us, will hear from the courts, because the investigations are proceeding very well. And we have identified that in many cases there are certain suspects, and we will act on those suspects. We're working very well together with the Hawks. We're working very well together with all the other colleagues, as Advocate Mothibi has alluded earlier, and there will be action, and action is going to be taken. We want to speak through actions. We don't want to create hype and headlines, but we want to make sure that when we take action, we are able to account, and we're able to issue indictments, because that investigation at that point would be done.
Well, I want to believe that you are all concerned about the reputations of the institutions that you represent, right? Because in time, people have come to think that all of these agencies are toothless. You see, that it's all talk, and it undermines even the president's intentions when he says, I'm going to instruct and order the SIU, as an example, to do 1, 2, 3 against COVID-19 related matters. People say, come on, give us a break. That's not going to happen, not anytime soon. So Paul Hoffman wants to know, Andy, that will the SIU advise Eskom to seek an anti-dissipation order against the former CEO or acting CEO of Eskom, Matsela Koko, after what he said on television?
Pratim, I know that the teams, the legal teams, are continuing to meet, and we have assessed what needs to be done. So we don't exclude the possibility of that order or the court being approached for that order. But at this stage, the teams are meeting, and I will get an update probably later today. But as I say, we don't exclude that order being prayed for. I need to just, whilst I'm on the floor, Ratim, just indicate that the Nkanza matter, which has really been making headlines, it's beginning to see traction, right? As of last week Friday, I get weekly updates from the legal team of SIU in terms of where the various matters are. As of last week Friday, the record in my feedback says the parties will approach the Judge Pillay for case management on the 27th of July 2020. So in terms of the record, that case management should have started wherever this matter is. So we are demonstrating that there's traction, and we really are serious. We know, as Mr. Ngwema says, we are aware that the public expectations are extremely high. We need to show traction and action in all aspects of what we do. So I just wanted to show you that there is that traction, and we will follow up to ensure that it reaches conclusion.
And Sipho, Alex Easton wants to know what the progress is in getting the Guptas back to South Africa.
Thank you, Pratim. We, as I said, there's very different reactions from different governments. So we are interacting with various governments to make sure that what has to be done from a legal point of view is done. So we are interacting with them. It's not as easy as we thought. Sometimes the processes are excruciatingly slow, but we are working on making sure that what has to happen in South Africa, whether the monies that have to come back, people that have to be extradited back into the country, those things happen. So we are interacting with governments to make sure that they assist us. So we are at the mercy of some of the governments in terms of assisting us to get whatever suspects that we are looking for with regards to various matters. So we are working on it, and we are trying our best. But as people can understand, it's not up to us, it's up to the other governments on the other side.
And are you following all the possible prosecutions and asset recoveries flowing from the Zondo Commission?
There's no doubt about that. That's why we are very excited about the regulations that have been made, because now we are going to have access. And some of the difficulties that we had have been resolved by the proclamation that has been made. So we are following the Zondo Commission. We have a team that is focusing on the developments there. But parallel to that, we are still conducting investigation that Advocate Mothibi has mentioned Eskom. We have made arrests in terms of other legs of Eskom. We are continuing with other legs of Eskom. So there's still going to be action with regards to those investigations. At the appropriate time, we'll make the announcements. At the appropriate time, we'll take the actions. South Africans should bear with us. They must understand that we have had issues over the past 10 years or more, and we are trying to deal with those issues, and some of those issues have affected the quality of our work. So we are trying to improve the quality of our work so that by the time we take action, by the time we make announcements, we know that the quality of our cases will be able to stand the test of criminal prosecution.
All right, let me look at Stuart Robinson wants to know what the progress is regarding Marcus Jooste and the Steinhoff matter.
In the Steinhoff matter, first of all, we had to make sure that we get the auditors on board, because they have been working on the matter for the past 2 years. And two, because this is a transnational matter as well, it's very complicated, it's very big, it involves many other countries. So we are now directing the forensic investigation in order to make sure that it meets the standards from a criminal prosecution and a criminal investigation point of view. So that investigation is continuing. We are working with the auditors. As you know, there was an offer made by the company, which we accepted as law enforcement. So that has helped us as well. But we have also tried to make sure that we create enough in order to insulate the company so that there is no influence. So there are enough safeguards for us to continue with the investigation and not to compromise it in case there are other conflicting issues that may arise, given the fact that the company is a complainant. And it may happen in the future that probably there also can be suspects in the matter that we are investigating. So that investigation is proceeding, and we are hoping that we'll be able to finish it and be able to take action on those people that are implicated. Part of the reasons why we're able to take the decisions that we're able to take is because the people implicated have left the company, and the shareholders are the complainants. And we are therefore moving together with the Hawks to try and make sure that we finish the investigation and we're able to take action at the time that we have to take action.
And there's also the other matter involving the former CEO of Eskom, Brian Molefe, regarding his pension. And I think the court said it should not be paid over. I'm not sure if what you were trying to recover pension-wise was ever paid back.
I'm not sure whether is that from an NPA point of view or from an SIU point of view.
I think it was an SIU matter. Advocate Mothibi?
All right. The Hawks were actually charged with investigating that matter. But of course, as part of our recoveries, we also wanting to make sure that we are as comprehensive as possible. And the issue of the CEO's pension will also be included. But I know for a fact that our colleagues at DPCI were also investigating that matter.
Now, how many cases have been reported to you regarding COVID-19 so far? Do you have a sense of the extent of corruption around COVID-19 contracts?
Yes. I mean, just an example, in Gauteng alone, in the Department of Health, at last count, the contracts that we had received to look at and assess were 167. That number keeps.
Oh, sorry, can you repeat that? I had 160, what, 5? Oh.
167. That
Okay.
was the latest. That was the latest information I received. At last,
and that's Gauteng alone.
Yes. At the last reporting, which was last week sometime, the number was sitting at 102, having gone up from 91, the initial 91. So the reason why it keeps going up, the investigators keep receiving information from these departments in terms of the contracts that continue to get work or that got work, which are on their database. So that number keeps changing, and that's the rationale for changing. In Eastern Cape, we've got that contract that has been publicized around the scooters, and the other one which related to the door-to-door awareness campaign, which was also publicized quite hugely. But there's also other contracts that we are looking at in the province. In the KZN, we've received various allegations, but those that have been publicized, I mean, number one, the Department of Social Development in the province having bought blankets, and those blankets were allegedly overpriced. So we are also looking at that. So yeah, there's quite a number of the contracts that we are looking at. But as the president announced, that we've got a center which enables all law enforcement agencies to collaborate, and that center is based at FIC. At last count, that center was seized with about 36 cases at the time. I mean, the number may have changed to date, but and those cases are distributed amongst SIU, DPCI, which is the Hawks, and FIC is also assisting with the information that's relevant to the investigations, and the NPA is also assisting with what's called prosecutor-guided investigations. So as agencies, I would like to just re-emphasize that that we would like to make sure that these matters are dealt with speedily, effectively, so that we produce the results that are legally sound, and we produce the impact that is expected by the public. Thanks.
And Sipho, what assistance in terms of prosecution are you giving the SIU? Because they may go in and investigate and like what Advocate Mothibi has just told us, but you may take longer to prosecute these cases anyway. Because have you built any special capacity that relates to COVID-19 related matters?
We have a good relationship with the SIU. As he said, we are all part of the collaborative center that the president mentioned. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, that's why we're able to move very swiftly on those cases which involved the Unemployment Insurance Fund, even with the issues that they're investigating in Gauteng. As soon as they see that there's a criminal element, they pass on to us, and the investigation with the Hawks continues or starts immediately. So we don't have to wait for them to finish. So we work very well together. We have a dedicated team of people that are concentrated on the work that is going to come from them. So the short answer to your question, yes, there are people on standby to receive cases from the SIU. And up to so far, we have worked tremendously well together.
Thank you.
Kenneth Chobejani and David Konyani, for instance, are going back to the question I've asked that, certain high prominent cases have not been prosecuted. And David Konyani is actually specific that the prominent politicians that are there, that are involved, it seems as if the NPA is getting around them. Obviously, somebody was arrested. You mentioned that the UIF matter, that money was deposited fraudulently into, but that's an ordinary civilian and a sort of small-time person compared to the big fish that has been featuring in the news for some time, that they are implicated in corruption. What about those?
You see, the small matters, it's easy for them, it's easy to resolve them. That's why we are able to take them to court as soon as possible. But when we're talking about the big complicated matters, they take longer, and there's a lot that you need. But at the end of the day, as I said, where evidence leads us, we will go. So there is no one now who is off the hook. And the public will see when we take action. And I want to emphasize that we are going to take action. They will see action. It's a matter of time.
Now, I come to you, Advocate Makgotho. Are there particular matters that you think it should be highlighted before we come to the end of this broadcast? What is it that is on the agenda of the Special Tribunal that you think will assist to address this concern on the members of the public, including the people attending this webinar, that the agencies are not doing enough to arrest corruption?
No, thank you very much, Tim Modise. I think one of the primary reasons for the existence of or the establishment of the Special Tribunal is precisely to look into these matters and to provide expeditious litigation. We are only in existence for 3 years, so within these 3 years, we need to move faster, and but yet without compromising the rule of natural justice. In brief, we do have matters. I think just last week, or early this week, we have a matter that came, we issued summons. It involved the Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation, and the court papers, again, we are looking at an amount of 450 million. So it's one of the cases that I think will quickly be coming in. You mentioned earlier the issue of Eskom, and before the Special Tribunal, we have got a matter of Eskom vis-a-vis the ABB, it's an international company, and we are looking to recover something like 2.2 billion rands. So these matters are high on our tray, and we do believe that within the very, very space of time that we have to execute and discharge our obligations, we will address some of these matters. There are quite a number of matters, but because of time, I'm not able to go through them one by one. But in brief, cumulative,
a quick question regarding the ABB matter and Eskom. Is ABB still on site? I mean, I know that you're trying to recover a certain amount of money from them, right? But when you do that, what happens? Are they taken off site, or do they still stay on the contract?
Well, because the matter, there's no order as yet, so we cannot necessarily be able to pin them down. But once you've made the investigation, I think will indicate whether they've been able to do that. But from the court's point of view, there is no order, and as such, there is no authoritative document that we can safely say get off the ground or get out of the way. But once a pronouncement is made in the form of a court order, an appropriate relief will be made, and as such, being a binding order, as it will be implemented accordingly.
Okay, Sipho, just a brief comment from you, and you'll notice that we sort of move around in circles, right? At the end of the day, the matter here is that of public confidence. That there is corruption, it's something that everybody accepts now, not that we should embrace it and allow it to happen in our society. And the cases of corruption are being ventilated in the media repeatedly. It's actually tiresome these days. And it actually casts the agencies in bad light. People have lost or beginning to lose confidence in them. Why should we have confidence that the NPA will show that it's different now under the current chief, Advocate Batoy? Tell us briefly.
Pratim, the public must judge us by our actions. And we understand that there are a lot of issues flying around in the newspapers and the WikiLeaks and so on, but they must understand the standards are not the same. We can't take those at face value and go them and take them to court and hope that we are going to win. This is why, as Advocate Mothibi has said, we are involved through guiding the investigations at the investigating stage. You must remember, our mandate is to prosecute. However, because we have a vested interest in the quality of the investigation, so we guide the investigations so to ensure that by the time action is taken, you will notice with many of the cases now, there is no postponement for further investigation. Once an action is taken, the matter is ready to go to court. So we are going to take action. We understand that the public is frustrated. Sure. We understand them fully, and we are fully frustrated. But we are going to take action, and the public must judge us by our actions.
Let me interrupt you there. I've got only a minute to go or less. Advocate Mothibi here. Well, I mean, not so long ago, you complained that 600 cases that you had on your hands were not being prosecuted by the NPA, and that's something, Sipho, to think about. That's why we we wonder whether NPA can do its work. But Advocate Mothibi, being given additional responsibility of investigating COVID-19, one wonders if you will be able to really do your work. Why should we trust and believe that the SIU will deliver? Very briefly. Thank you.
Okay, briefly, on the number of cases that have been referred to NPA, as I said earlier on, those are the matters that we report on, and the questions were asked at the time by the public, having read our annual report, and the number at the time was indicated. But we've since passed that stage where we've really made sure that our memorandum of understanding between ourselves and NPA indicates what has to be done, who needs to do what, and I am satisfied as I sit here that the work is underway to see those matters being attended to. Now,
well, let me just let's pause right there because we're going to be cut off. And thank you, gentlemen, for having been panelists on this very important discussion. I appreciate your time. Thank you again. And I also want to thank our attendees for having been part of this discussion and for your questions. Until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.